All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back, guys, to Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast. You're with Chris, Angie, and we have a special guest on today. You guys have probably seen him throughout Instagram. I have been doing a lot of posts. His name is Dr. Daniel Higuera. Did I already screw it up?
Yeah.
How bad was that?
There's no U in there.
Yeah, it's not a Higuera. It's a Guerra.
Higuera. There you go. That's pretty good.
Guerra.
I work in a very Hispanic heavy city. So
then why are you not taking this over here so we don't
this is better.
Butcher his name? All right, guys. As you could hear, I totally butchered.
We'll cut that part out.
Because of my accent is not right. Okay, so Dr. Daniel Higuera
That's better.
with us.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be talking with him about body composition and call volumes. This is something that really sparked my interest, and I was sending over to Chris, hoping that he would want to also talk about this, just because we both have drastically different call volumes. So we're really excited to speak with him. But before we go into that, I just want to say thank you to some of our sponsors really quick. Rescue One CBD, they just did a speech over at FDIC regarding cannabis in the fire service. All of his products, you can use the code TAILBOARD, get 15% off. Frontline Optics, of course, TAILBOARD, 15% off for that as well. We are looking forward to an interview with the owner of that at the end of this month. And then, of course, buy me a coffee button. Please do that. Elena, thank you so much for buying us a lot of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
That was amazing. Love you. And then let's kind of get going here. Let's get going. So, hi, Doctor.
Hi.
That's much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Dan. We're going to go Dr. Dan. All right.
We'll go with Dr. Dan.
Yeah. So you've been posting a lot of things that have intrigued my interest a lot as far as body composition goes. And we talked on the phone for a little bit too and had some good conversation there. But the main thing really is that caught my interest is the body composition with the call volume. But before we go into that, do you mind just telling everybody your background and what kind of made you turn into the firefighter and police realm?
Sure. So the correct way of saying my last name, first and foremost. So in Spanish is Higuera, and English pronunciation is Higuera. So the H and the U is silent. But I started my career in sports. I got my bachelor's and my master's in exercise physiology, and my career track was taking me towards the direction of sports. So I've been working in professional and collegiate and in the private sector of sports, from high school to college, different divisions of college, and into a very small stint in pro soccer. And because the world of sport is very, very competitive, very cutthroat, I started working in the private sector for a good amount of time. And in that private sector, one of the owners, they wanted to start a tactical strength and conditioning component to their athletic branch. And somebody in that network told us to reach out to Santa Ana College. So we reached out to Santa Ana College because they have a big reach of firefighters. They work with maybe 20-something departments there, fire departments in Southern California. So I reached out to him, or me and my boss reached out to him, and we talked about it. Nothing really flourished out of it. But later on, maybe some weeks, months later, they reached out to me and says, "Hey, would you be interested in a part-time job? Work with fire?" I said, "Sure." So then I started working with fire in 2017-ish. And 2-3 years later, they offered me a full-time position. Well, I applied for a full-time professor position, and I was very fortunate to get offered the position. And since 2019, I think I've been a full-time professor at Santa Ana College working with incumbent firefighters. So we have maybe 2,000 firefighters per year across 20 something different departments here in Southern California. I wasn't actively pursuing a career in the tactical realm. That's the way the cards aligned for me.
So what have you seen kind of as you've transitioned from professional soccer? I know you said you were only there for a cup of coffee, but that counts. I mean, that counts more than a lot of people. Coming from that to then the tactical profession where you're like, holy crap, these are not athletes, but we're going to do athletic stuff. What's some stuff you ran into there?
Oof, big stark differences between the two populations. Given that the athletic population, they're in their late teens, 18, 19 to their early 20s. That's the majority of the ages in sport. So, and then these guys, there's a carrot dangled in front of them. So if they want to play at the next division up, if they want to play in the league, then they have to be putting out every single time. That is not too much observed in the fire service. Not to me, I'm not saying that they're not motivated or disciplined, but the carrot is very, very different. And so the athlete, these guys, they prioritize their sleep and recovery. They prioritize their nutrition. They prioritize their exercise because that's what's going to help them perform better on the pitch, whatever sport that they're playing. And that is the name of the game in the athletic sector. Now, in the fire service, the median age in the fire service, at least the population that we work with over here, it's like mid to late 30s. And these are individuals who have two lives. They have an on-duty life and they have an off-duty life. And in their off-duty life, they may be husbands and wives, and they may be fathers and mothers. So they have so much that's taking over their like off-duty life, and then on duty, well, they have a job to do. So their main thing is, I just got to stay healthy for my family. I got to stay healthy for the job. The carrot is that health. So how that motivates exercise, nutrition, and everything else is very, very different. But I think that was my biggest obstacle to overcome. Was I'm not working with the 22-year-old who is grinding day in and day out to get to the next level. I'm now working with the 37, the 45, the 52-year-old who has a long list of challenges and adversities that we have to figure out, where does nutrition and where does exercise really fall in. So those are the biggest differences that I noticed going from one sector to the other.
So when you have these busy people, and in Southern California, you're busy, what's your go-to? Like, you see this case coming in, you know it's going to be a tough one. They were up last night, or they're busy, or it's testing season, they got something going on, and they're walking in, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be a fight. Like, I know I'm in for a conversation here. What's your go-to with a lot of these guys?
There's so much flexibility that has to be involved, and you have to have plan A, B, and C. So I'll give you a very high scope type of scenario that we commonly run into. Is we have programs for the fire departments that they're dedicated to either building conditioning characteristics or muscular performance characteristics, muscle size, muscle strength, muscle power, etc. And if we get them on a day where they're well rested, then sure, we can push weights, we can push volume, we can push intensity. But then we get them on their second day on the shift. Maybe they work 48s, and now we get them on the second shift, and they had 1, 2, or 3 calls after midnight. There is no way I'm going to have them lift 85, 90% of their maximum. There's no way I'm going to have them condition at some high intensities. They probably have the drive for it, and many times they want to do it. And when that's the case, sure, we allow it, but we have to have contingencies in play where they show up and says, hey, I'm not feeling it today. No problem. Let's go to a lower intensity one. So we have these buckets, if you will, a low intensity workout, moderate intensity, high intensity. And depending on how they're feeling, then that's the workout that they can choose to participate in. So those days that they're just trashed because they had 3 or 4 wake-up calls and they didn't get much sleep, then here's a low intensity 15-minute cycle with some stretching at the very end. Is it really gonna push improvements in their VO2 max? Are they gonna get stronger and bigger muscles on this one? No, it's just recovery. It's just getting their body moving a little bit, getting them to do some sort of PT, and not lose that momentum of getting exercise in. But if the cards align and they feel well rested, sure, let's push some weights, let's push some intensity.
I have to ask, because I do know a lot of firefighters who have very poor body awareness as far as feeling that way, right? I feel like after a while, if you're on a higher volume department or like a higher volume call.
If you run a lot of calls compared to other people.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
If you run a lot of calls, speaking gibberish today, that they are almost get so used to that feeling that they're on like overdrive all the time almost. And so I see some firefighters who on 2 hours of sleep will do super high intensity, will lift, 80% of their, and this is like continuous. Do you feel that is a hindrance? Or do you feel like if they feel that they can do that and they maybe not necessarily perform it well, I'll say well, do you feel like they can and should push? Like where's the boundary there as far as like mental resilience goes and then what you should actually be doing for your body?
I think this is where that art of coaching really comes in, is if we just focus on like all the metrics, right? Their HRV is low, their recovery is low, their Whoop band says that they should be recovering, their Aura ring says that to take it low or take it slow that day. But that individual has this unbreakable drive that after 2 to 3 hours of sleep, they can still show up to the gym and push some weights. That's just who they are. And although physiology in the textbook may say, hey, the risk of injury is much higher, and it may be, but for me to go in and says, nope, you're not going to do that today because physiology, I think I'm doing them a disservice. So I have to balance that physiology with that psychology side of things. And for those who are used to doing it, they have a long history of doing it and doing it well, I encourage it. Continue doing it. But if I know the individual has these ebbs and flows in their fitness, they have 2 to 3 months where they're really getting after it, another 2 to 3 months where they fell off the wagon. And they're a little bit older, they already have a low back injury or knee injury, and they had those 2 hours of sleep and they still want to push hard. I was like, hey, let's talk about this a little bit more. Your body's not too well conditioned, you're feeling tired, your back is already a little stiff. Let's do a little lighter workout today. So it's those two big ends of the spectrum that you have to know that individual's history. You have to know their personality to make that good call.
So would you say, because we've already spoken about this, Chris and I, would you say that wearables for firefighters are probably not a great thing to use? Or would you say it depends on the person?
If I'm forecasting 10 years in the future, I project wearables are going to be a staple in firefighter health and wellness. Because wearables, the technology behind them, they're getting better and better and better. I'll give you an example. About, I don't know, what's it now, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago now when I was doing my master's, my advisor at the time, his name is Dr. Eddie Joe. He's big on Instagram too. You can reach out. Hi, Dr. Eddie Joe, if you're listening. He got a contract with some wearable startup company at the time, and they were trying to measure how accurate heart rate was during exercise. So they were tracking heart rate at recovery or at rest, and they were comparing it to the gold standard, which is a 12 lead EKG, and it was pretty spot on. And then as exercise began and movement started happening at the arm and the wrist, as that wearable started sliding up and down, the accuracy of that heart rate started to be terrible and very inaccurate. Now, fast forward to present day, a lot more of these wearables, they have controlled for that. So although there is still sweat going on in the arm and the wrist or the watch is moving up and down, the accuracy is getting much better. So that's a 10-year time period. Now, if you project 10 years into the future, the way the algorithms behind how we estimate sleep quality and quantity, the algorithms behind HRV, the algorithms behind core temperature, all this is going to start to get a lot more sophisticated. So as the newer generation starts to enter the fire service, who's already very well accustomed to looking at their watch or their ring or whatever wearable they like to choose, and we start teaching them a lot more of how to align those metrics along with how they're feeling, then I think we're going to start seeing a more sophisticated push in the health and wellness space. And this is what really has influenced a lot of my approach in the fire service. Is I come from a sport background where every physiological metric was tracked on a daily. for these collegiate, these sport athletes, is we track their hydration, their sleep, their recovery, their calories, their protein, their carbs. Every metric that we can think of was tracked. So then now I start working in the fire service, and I have that same mentality is, well, what metrics can we track? What metrics are worth tracking? And then once we start collecting all this, what is it telling us? How does this influence the day-to-day life of the firefighter? And although we're in a very infant stages of using wearables in the fire space, 10 years in the future, I think we're going to start to mature a lot in that field, and you'll start seeing what we've been seeing in the collegiate and the sports space of how to use metrics to track performance and recovery and all things along that nature there.
Awesome. So let's go into a little bit of the call volume and body composition then. I did find it incredibly interesting that the leanest one seemed to be that middle road, which you would think would be not the case. That one blew me away. I really didn't think that.
So for the listeners on this one, this is my dissertation work. This is maybe 25% of my dissertation work here. Is I wanted to see how body composition really changed with different tiers of call volume. So I had 50-something participants on this one, and I had firefighters from different departments and from different stations too. So the slower stations, or just lower call volume tier, they were running on average about 6 calls per shift across a 24-hour shift. Those in the high call volume, they're running roughly about 14 calls per 24 hours. And then the moderate, I think they were running about 9 or 10 calls, somewhere in that ballpark there. And one of the metrics I looked at is how does body fat percentage, how does that change across these tiers? And the one with the highest level of body fat was, surprisingly, those in the slower stations, which you would assume that they would have healthier levels of body comp because they have more time to dedicate to their nutrition and to their exercise. And then those who had the second highest levels of body fat was the high call volume station, and those that had the leanest levels was at the moderate station, or moderate call volume tier. And that was the outcome there. But then you have to start asking, well, why does the firefighters at the slow stations, why do they have the highest level of body fat? And when we start looking down at the literature, the scientific literature, to try to see if this is supported or if this is unsupported, then I started noticing a pattern here where there was about 2 or 3 other papers also showing that firefighters at slower stations had higher levels of body fat, had higher levels of cholesterol, had higher levels of blood pressure. Why? That was a question we have to answer. And when we start trying to figure out that answer there is, well, usually, not always, is the older firefighter is at the slower station. They've put in their 20 to 30 years at the other busier stations. So your older firefighter is going to have higher blood pressure and higher cholesterol and higher body fat. So age is a huge confounding factor here. All right, but now if we control for age, let's take age out of the equation. What else is influencing this? And as we looked at the other publications, they're eating out of boredom. As they're running 6 calls on average across 24 hours. Sure, they're training. Sure, they're doing the details that they have to do in the inspections. But other than that, is maybe they eat out of boredom. They're hanging around the kitchen table and they're just doing kitchen talk, and they're snacking on whatever the community brought in, whether that be cookies, donuts, what have you. During the LA fires that were in January, as I was visiting different fire stations, you could see their kitchen table was just filled with goodies. Gatorades, water, donuts, snacks, cookies. They were showing me their pantry. That was also stacked. And energy drinks as well, and all these different things. You see it lying around the station. So it's going to get consumed. It's going to get taken home. The guys are not going to throw it away. The community brought them into them. And so that's a pattern you see. Now on the opposite end of that spectrum, those who are really busy, these guys are running 14 calls per shift on average. And maybe they're quick calls, maybe quick turnarounds for 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe they're a little bit longer, 45, 60 minutes, especially if they have to transport. And now they're at the hospital holding up a wall for a while until their patient gets seen. Now they have very little time to get some exercise and some nutrition in. So when they do have a small time, let's get something quick, something I can just pick up at a drive-thru, something I can pick up at a quick convenience store. because I don't know if I'm going to have another break for another couple hours. And usually these quicker, easier access foods, they're calorie dense. A lot of calories, very low satiating. So in a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, you're going to be hungry again. And you're going to go through the same pattern again. And then that moderate tier, that seemed to have a balance between the two, is they were busy enough to keep them active, but they had some time in between throughout the day to shop, to cook, to eat, and prep some good meals there, get some exercise in. Maybe they're not long workouts, but enough to get their heart rate up, get a sweat going, stimulate the muscle. So that is what I found in my dissertation work here. So there seems to be that sweet spot somewhere in the middle. And that's where we're at.
Now, when you started finding this data, maybe presenting this data and bringing it up to the more busy stations or the whoever's in control of those busy stations, and you got to the leadership end of it, and I'm only assuming that you may not have, and you presented this to the busy stations and said, hey, this is what's happening. Your guys are falling victim to the circumstance of being at this busy station. Can we start modifying things, or is there anything we can do to make this better on them? Were you met with any kind of resistance to that of like, well, this is the job they want, it's time to toughen up? Or were there some open ears of like, really didn't think about those factors, let's try to look at some stuff? Because this is compelling data, but it's also, we still got a job to do. You still got to fulfill that position. The calls still need to be run, and you can't just start calling people all around the city because you run 11 and you don't want to get to 14. So what's some realistic solutions that you could work together with the department on for this?
So to be very, very clear, is my job is not to influence policy at all. My wheelhouse is physiology, firefighter health and wellness. Anything outside of that lane, I don't know the ins and outs of it. So for me to come out as a researcher and saying, hey, look, fire chief, look what the data is showing, you guys need to change, I'm way outside of my lane on that one. And to be transparent on this one, I have not had those conversations with admin personnel. I presented this information on like the workshops and the lectures that I conduct, but in no way have I presented in a way of saying, you guys must do something. Here's a list of items that you guys should be doing. So that is not my game plan at all. Now, what can be done in their current circumstance? That's a better question to ask, and I think that's where I can wiggle in a little bit more. Is, hey, firefighter, you guys are running 14 calls, or you guys are at a high call volume station. What can you guys do? I know you guys are not going to have a set time to eat your foods. What can you do? This is where prepping in advance comes in. Is have some high protein snacks available for you guys. Have a go bag just already prepped and leave it in the rig of some beef jerky, some high protein bars, some protein shakes that are in there ready to go. So high protein meals, or not meals, snacks can keep you satiated for another hour or two, so you don't make that poor decision of running through the drive. When it comes to exercise, if you don't know if you're going to be able to get 15, 20 minutes is do something quick enough to just stimulate that muscle, get a quick sweat going if you can. There's something called a minimal effective dose. Is what's the minimum you have to do in order to still, or either to maintain or start seeing some sort of gains, whether that's conditioning or muscular performance. And maybe that may be having to do 8 sets, 10 sets. So you're only going to be able to do 10 sets of, upper body push. You're not going to be able to do anything else, but that's the only thing that you have to check off on your list. And maybe you can get that done in maybe, 15, 20 minutes. So planning ahead and being very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Being diligent with your time, I guess, is I know I'm going to have only 15 minutes to work out. Maybe a quick circuit to get a sweat going, or a 10-set exercise for an upper body push. I'll get it done in 15 minutes. I know I'm not going to have a set time to eat today, so I'm going to have some high protein snacks available. If you guys can float it financially, is have those pre-made meals already for you guys made. So if you can run to the station, pop it in the microwave, and now you have a good amount of protein, carbs, and fats that can keep you saturated for another couple hours. I think that is where the solution, I don't even want to say solution, but I think that's where the game plan may lie for these very busy individuals. What's the next best approach?
Yep. And I think that's a conversation too that we have had in the past about it's not really your department's responsibility to keep you in check with your health. We are lucky enough to have departments who do allow us to work out on shift and whatnot. And so I feel like the bulk of our work has to be done by us. we have to have that discipline to do that. And it has to mean something more to us for us to keep that ball rolling. And so I love what you're doing for the fire departments out in Southern California. So I'm just going to close out and say, first of all, Dr. Dan, thank you very much for coming on and speaking with us and talking about all this research that you've done and all the help that you're doing for all these fire departments and police departments out there in Southern California. My husband's a police officer too, so I can definitely appreciate what you are doing. I wish that you were here helping all of us, although I know we do still have some resources and whatnot. If you would like to tell people, hey, these are the things to focus on.
Gotcha.
On duty, off duty, and close out with some advice with that.
Ooh, that's really broad. All right,
Okay,
so
how would I change it like this? What are 5 things? Was that too much?
Yeah.
3? Okay, top 3. Top 3 things for people to focus on to create change and longevity in their careers.
All right, so all these we can go down rabbit holes. If I stay pretty broad on this one, on the advice, one of them is prioritize your recovery, 100%, whether you're 28 or 58. Prioritize your recovery and learn what helps you fall asleep quicker. Once you learn that, then your on-duty sleep begins to improve so much. That's a deep rabbit hole we can go down, maybe next episode. The second one is nutrition. Firefighters across the board, they are underdosed in terms of their protein intake. Protein intake is maybe at the around 80 to 120 grams per day on average, and we have to bump those numbers up closer to a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass on the low end. If they can float it financially, because protein is the expensive macronutrient, get your protein up. Get some more your lean cuts in there, get your lean cuts, supplement if you need to, get your protein up. That will help you retain as much muscle mass as possible when you're going through a weight loss phase. That will help you maintain muscle mass as you're getting older. And again, another deep rabbit hole. And then the last one is find a way to get on a routine that you do not compromise on for your PT. Even if it's just getting in a couple push-ups on a busy shift, that you can still say, I got some sort of physical training in. That because it keeps the momentum going. I mean, there's a whole psychology and the art of coaching behind that one too. 3 deep rabbit holes. We can leave it for next episode, but prioritize your recovery, increase your protein intake, find ways to continue getting some sort of PT in on your on and off duty days.
I was going to say, I'm about to ruin this.
Don't. So one big thing that
we didn't even talk about supplements. I'd say,
I know
4.
It's okay.
4.
It's all right. No. Just want to throw it out there. If you haven't heard of Dr. Dan, that's because you're not selling anything, which is nice. So that's one of the main reasons that we like talking to guys like you, is because there's not a sales pitch coming down the end, and you're not going to say, I told you those 3 things. Now buy my sleep supplement and my protein powder and my my 15-week weight loss plan that I'm going to sell you for $12. So it's great advice that we know is coming purely from research and trying to help the fire service standpoint. And maybe in the future you write a book and we'll buy that. But for right now, you're taking the high road and just kind of trying to help people, which I think is pretty awesome. The guys and girls down in SoCal with the 2,000 people you get to see are incredibly fortunate to have you down there. And like I said before, I appreciate the angle you're taking on this stuff and the way you're presenting to them and what you're pushing out to the world. And it's just great, man. So thanks a lot. And I appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have you back for more than one episode, because Angie likes to ask small questions like, how do I change my whole life? Just give me 3 easy tips to change everything and also fix my childhood memories. So it's just like, there's just no end to her questions, the depth of her questions. So we'll have plenty more episodes in the bank for you.
Well, appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.